Welcome, Mike. Thank you, Sylvia, for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be back here. At the first event, we had the same panel with startups. At that time, we only did it with Colombian startups. And we are evolving, and now we have a Mexican startup, an Argentinian, and a Colombian startup to give it more flavor and to see all the developments we are experiencing in the regions. Thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure. And a brief introduction from each of you, of your company and yourselves. A couple of words. So maybe we can start with Federico. Very well, my name is Federico Malek. I am the CEO of Iúnigo. Iúnigo is one of the first digital insurance companies in the region. We operate in Argentina in the car segment. Our value proposal, our value proposition, our mission is to use technology, to leverage on technology to provide outstanding experiences to our users, to our insured users. So we begin from underwriting. We have a team that has developed programs to do very intelligent underwriting. Our models use more than 100 variables in order to draw the profile of each user that want to quote from our site, and in this way to give them different prices, and also the acquisition flow is different for each person that receives a quote through our site. So the people that have a potential of high lifetime and low losses, we give them very competitive prices and we give them immediate flow. And those that we identify that are not so attractive because they don't have such a good loss history, we set up a more complex flow in order to discourage their purchase. Since we have good underwriting, we can have incredible experience. I think that the traditional insurance companies, in a way, have gone through intermediaries for a long time, and it is very difficult for them to interact with their users. So it was not that difficult to provide outstanding experiences. Let me give you an example. You know that the assistance service of an insurance company is probably one of the ways in which users measure the service of the insurance company. We realize that these kind of help or assistance in cities such as Buenos Aires, because of traffic and the chaos of the city, sometimes took 2 hours. I think that in Latin America, this is a common problem in most cities. And over 60% of help is slide mechanics, a motor that is not able to change a wheel because they are not able to do it, or just a battery problem, they run out of battery. And the traditional insurance companies deploy cranes in order to solve those problems of slide mechanics. So we have our own network of motorcycles with mechanics that move around the city, and they go around the areas where our insurers travel, so that in the morning they are deployed throughout the south or western or northern part of Buenos Aires, and we get there in about 15 minutes to assist our clients. That's why our NPSs are flying nowadays, and people stay longer with us. We are from the San Cristobal Group. San Cristobal Group is one of the main insurers in Argentina. So that's another important point we will discuss later on. Yes, we are an example that traditional groups of over 80 years in the insurance, and it's a mutual, can really team up with entrepreneurs and launch native digital companies. Thank you very much, Juan Camilo. Well, it's a pleasure. Good afternoon. My name is Juan Camilo, a CEO of Busqo.com. Thank you very much for staying here for the last presentation. I know it's difficult after 2 days. We will try to make it as entertaining, as amusing as possible. Busqo.com, as several of you know, we are a digital broker of insurance focusing mainly on SOAT and cars. And we are planning to go into all personal lines as well. We have been in the market for about, we started in 2012. And we decided to set up this company because of the difficulty of buying a policy in the traditional market. So we found that there are a lot of players in other countries, such as in the UK, in Spain, very strong players that have grown considerably, and they are called comparators. So, and they generate a very important value proposition for the client because the client is now used to compare each product. And they are used to do it in other industries because by comparing, they realize that they can get very important benefits both in terms of price and product. And that is why we decided to set up a company that was called Asegúrate Fácil. That's a company I founded, and 2 years ago we organized ourselves into Busqo.com after merging with another competitor which was called Red Seguro. This has been the first merger in Colombia of this type of InsurTechs. It was a very interesting experience. And we want to grow. We want to work with insurance companies. Nowadays, we work with all the insurance companies. But the final message is that we have always been trying to work with insurance companies, and we need their support. We need them to assist us with technology so that these business can escalate further and explode as it has exploded in other countries. Okay, my name is Maik Schafer. I am co-founder and general director of Mango Life, the first digital offer of life insurance in Mexico. We are a broker, legally speaking. We are an insurance agent, a broker. We don't have a price or products comparison. We work just with one insurance company that gives us the products, and we work hand in hand with them in offering better products. So we are more like an MGA type. We are responsible for marketing, sales, underwriting, and service. I come from Germany, but I have been living in Mexico for 4 years. The co-founder is Mexican, and he has a background in e-commerce, and I have a background in insurance. I used to be Chief Innovation Officer for an insurance company in Mexico, and together with my co-founder, we created the digital sales of auto insurance. This digital sale of insurance in Mexico is pretty well developed as compared to other markets in Latin America. However, it's only for cars. In the other areas, such as life, health insurance, housing, it's practically zero, the offer we have. So we left the cooperative world, and it has been very interesting. We are still a very young company. We created the company in January of last year. In August, we launched our products into the market, and now we are selling two products, a life product and a savings plan for a savings retirement plan. And we have two more plans, one for health and one for financing education for children. Well, thank you very much. So this has given us an overview of each one of these companies. So you are representing 3 different countries and leaving the experience of the ecosystem of InsurTech in the region. You're just starting. What is the differentiator? And the question is very specific for each one of you. What is the differentiator of each one of your countries in InsurTech, Argentina, Colombia, and Mexico? You started answering this question, but let's elaborate further, particularly the advantages and disadvantages in each country. Well, about Mexico, during the last 2 to 3 years, the InsurTech has become a very attractive proposition by investors, angels, and institutionals. They are all very interested in participating in InsurTech. There are more people in InsurTech, more companies. Yesterday we saw the statistics. I think that in Mexico is the country with more companies of InsurTech together with Brazil. Brazil should have twice as much as Mexico because they have twice a larger market than Mexico. But what I have seen, not just in Mexico, but also in the United States, but it was 5 or 8 years later, like different waves of InsurTech. The first wave was digital brokers and comparison web pages, which are growing a lot nowadays in Latin America. And then one of these brokers, well, there are different development pathways for these brokers. Some of them go on and grow and take part of the market share because e-commerce is an oligopoly in more advanced states, and some of them become B2B. They sell their digital platforms to insurance companies, and other brokers become companies with license to be insurance, and it will be very interesting to see which will be the next steps for these first InsurTechs that we have identified. In terms of funding and financing, Mexico is still very backwards as compared to the United States or Europe. I can't judge about the other countries. I think they are not more advanced. The ecosystem in this area of funding and financing is years light behind. We are working just with angels. We are going to a round A. This is what neobanks did. They are 2 years ahead of us. They raised more capital. If you can raise capital in the United States, that's fine, because local funds have very stringent conditions. Half of the valuation that you can get from the United States. So this is another topic we will discuss further because it's a very specific topic for Latin America. BCs sometimes take advantage of some situations with startups as compared to what we see outside. Juan Camilo, Colombia. What about Colombia? Well, speaking about Colombia, are we going to discuss BCs? No. First of all, InsurTech. How do you see the development of InsurTech in the country? And which are the advantages that Colombia could offer to create a startup in InsurTech? I believe that at this point, the opportunities are all. I mean, we have huge opportunities. This is an industry that is just beginning. For instance, now, fintech is a very hot topic and it's very sexy. I think that InsurTech is going along the same path, and in 2 or 3 years we will get there. So I think that right now the opportunities are all open to us, and it's important for insurance companies to be ready, to be prepared for this. Making a strong investments in technology, I think that this has to become a very important core for our companies. There were many insurance companies that did not even have, or many internal areas to those companies. They just had third parties to do the technology part in their companies. And I think that this is a mistake. Now, most companies have this as an in-house service, and this is how it should be, because in the end, this is a very important part of your business. And if companies want to survive in the future, they have to do it, and they have to invest in technology. They have to invest a lot of money and resources in this new area. But I think that a lot is yet to be done, and we must be ready, and there will be new competitors, as Mike is saying. I don't think that the large companies are going to disappear or vanish. What I do think is that, for instance, in a market like Colombia, the insurance penetration is very low. These new companies will start capturing or attracting new markets. which is not captive today, as it is being done in many of the fintechs today with loans, microloans. They are capturing basically most of the people who was not in the bank, did not have a bank account. I think that this is what we will experience with SureTech. Argentina. Well, 4 years ago, we had a change of government. Our new government has been very supportive of digitalization of many processes and debureaucratization of many formalities with the government. Nowadays, the digital policy, the digital signature, it's a reality. They have opened the databases of many state agencies so that we can connect to their databases, which are essential for us to underwrite. You can register, you can take data from the National Registry of Individuals, which allows you to do an online validation of the individual. You just download an app, and you can open a bank account. We can connect with the traffic authorities to know whether an individual had any traffic fines, and this allows us to develop our underwriting models. Argentina has very good e-commerce penetration. Is one of the many unicorns in Latin America. OLX for the world. People are used to buy through internet, so I would say that this is a good market to start. The risks, well, as I said, there is a lot of macro instability at this point and a lot of political instability, and this makes, well, for all individual countries with the exception of Brazil. Brazil could separate from the continent and have its own continent. But the rest of the countries in Latin America, if we really want to fund seriously, we have to grow at the country level. One country now is not enough. Okay, let's change a bit the dynamics. I have a series of statements, and anyone who wants to give an answer, please say yes, no, and why. The first statement. It is difficult to work with millennials. Working with millennials is difficult. Yes, no, and why? And you don't have to answer, all of you, just anyone. I think that we are also millennials. Yeah, that's why I'm asking the question. Well, no, I think you are not. How old do you think I am? Okay, to answer your question, I think that, yes, it's difficult. Why? I think that we are all used to having parents. Most of our parents worked in a company. My father worked for 25 years with ExxonMobil, and it was very normal to work for one company for many, many years. But now that happens very seldom. So it's a challenge to have people motivated to stay for a long time working with us because the learning curve is always difficult. Additionally, there is the question, well, let me tell you an anecdote. We have a very strong call center in-house call center. And once we had a very good salesman, but he always was late. And he said, well, I'm very sorry. In the morning, I go to the gym first, and this is the time I can come. So for him, the priority was going to the gym and then work. So those things do happen with millennials, and I think that you have to see how to deal with them.
Que antes o con otras generaciones.
I don't think it's more difficult, but it's different, and you have to adapt, and companies have to adapt. And this type of change for larger companies with a long history, banks or insurance companies, it's difficult for them to adapt to us. This flexibility, for instance, no, first I go to the gym and then I go to work. That doesn't mean that the results are not going to be good. that is simply flexibility. They want flexibility. And the leaders, the directors that are maybe 50 years old or older said, no, I did not have that privilege. And I won't accept that. It's like complaining about rain and saying, no, why? We did not have any rain yesterday. Why are we having rain today? So those are the new realities, and the new generations have even more passion to work when they see a purpose in what they are doing, a purpose of the company that motivates them. They don't go to work just to work 8 hours in an office. They don't see any value in that, and that is very good, because that scheme of work is not efficient. So I don't think it's more difficult to work with millennials. No, it's just different. Okay, the next question. In English, we say hire fast and fire fast. Yes, no, or why? Hire fast or fire? Slow hire and fire fast. That's my motto. Well, fire fast, well, they are humans. It's not just trash. So investing a lot of time in selection to minimize the risks of having to fire somebody. That is something ethical that you have to do. On the other hand, if it doesn't work, I see the main reasons why it doesn't work. It's a lack of fit and poor attitudes rather than skills. The skills you can learn. But changing attitudes is more difficult. Changing the culture, that is extremely difficult. And it's not realistic. So it makes sense to fire them as soon as possible if they don't fit. Well, I see that there are many Germans around. Camilo studied in the German school here, so he has his German culture inside. Well, in Groupon, we had to work with a broker of Rocket Internet and Oliver Sambo. So I think that, they were the ones that invented or that coined that term of hire fast and fire fast. When I was working for Groupon, they called me on Saturday morning to ask me how many people did I fire that week. Or they told me, you have to go to Chile and just blow it up. So that's very cultural. It's you have to break up things, add many people. I think that you have to be careful in that. Because, well, maybe you can see what Rocket Evolution has been. They haven't done very well with several of their companies. I think that with what you mentioned before about the millennials, well, we are trying to take care of our culture. And of course, it's important to hire well, and it is equally important to fire those people that are not helping your team and that become a cultural problem. But you have to be careful with culture. I don't think that to promote an agile culture of people that are really empowered to have this vision of hire fast, fire faster will help. Well, the last point, insurance plays rocks on the way for startups. Yes, no, and why? Yes, yes. No, I don't want to create any enemies. I don't want to make any enemies here. Most people know me, and I think I have told all of them many times that up straight, I do feel that many times insurance companies And I am referring to the talk of Martin yesterday from Seguros Canguro. If we want this market to further develop, to grow exponentially, we have to work as a team. And in order to work as a team, that requires the insurance companies, instead of becoming an obstacle, support us with what the market is asking for. It is simply that the market is asking for these things. The market is asking for these digital systems. At least once a week, somebody calls me, a friend calls me that is buying a policy with us, and they say, well, Juan Camilo, do you really think I have a fingerprint pad in my office? What is that? What's a fingerprint pad? Well, that's the ink to put your fingerprint. He doesn't know what that is, what the fingerprint pad is. Well, anyway, this is something that is surprising, that we still use a formulary or a draft form, which has not changed since 1970 or 80. And every time I ask insurance, they say it's the superintendency, and the superintendency blames the insurance. So, I mean, nothing happens in the end. They just point fingers to each other. Yeah, we have people from both of them here, and I would like this meeting to do some changes, because we have been discussing this for a long time, but nothing happens. When I heard it yesterday, in the anti-money laundering, I couldn't believe it. Yes, it's a requirement to print it, to sign it, and to put your fingerprint. Yeah. Well, it's no surprise that digital business lost 35% of their business. It's incredible. I mean, obviously, that is a very big obstacle that could be removed.
Pero en general,
But in general, I don't think that they put rocks on our way, that they put obstacles on our way. It's just that they don't care. Not all of them. Those that are taking advantage of the opportunities that come close with different programs. We have several programs, local programs, insurance programs in Mexico, and some insurance companies are sponsoring these startups. Mexico. In Mexico, for example, car insurance, there's already web pages to connect with them. And when you talk to insurers, they would like to have APIs. Yes, it's not that they say that they hate APIs. But they say, oh, yes, how many millions do you have in your wallet? I know, I make my business case with my director, I do my calculations, and then I tell you the APIs and how much business are you going to bring. It's like, what was first, the egg or the chicken? At a given point, you have to bet on what you believe is coming your way. Connectivity and, well, having data accessible, not personal data from your clients, but data about losses. For example, there's many interesting theories, there's many interesting platforms that like type SAS in Colombia, but they need the data to be able to work. Other than that, they're not taking advantage of the opportunities. So we need that. We need to bet on what is coming. Digital brokers are not going to, well, the brokers, the insurance brokers are not going to disappear. They will rather transform. It's just like the travel agencies. Today there's travel agencies, but they simply are digital. So we have to work on this issue of connectivity. We have to work very hard and take advantage of the opportunities. And something a little bit more personal. Someday, one woman was telling me that the more you progressed in your career path, the lonelier you were, the more powerful you were, the more alone you were. But you, as CEOs, how do you handle that possible solitude, that lonely life, and not having the possibility of having people around you? Now you do have to pay your people. That is a very demanding job. How do you handle that? With a good bond and a good team. That is basically the way to do it. I rest a lot in the forum that we have built, which is made up of people from the San Cristobal group, but we needed some capabilities, some skills that we didn't have in the group. We have people that are specialized in Insurtech, and we use them a lot for support. And in my team also, constantly I try to empower my team and my leaders and teach them that they're also co-founders, because we're a peer team and that have always worked on the development of this insurance company. Well, no, as Federico says, it's key to set up a team of people with good skills and that you can trust in order to be able to delegate on them. Because as a CEO, you have to think about the strategy and where you really want to go. And that implies a lot of time. People think that it doesn't imply time, but it does. You do have to devote a lot of time, and for that you need to find people that you trust, very very good people you trust, and that can handle the operation. If we look at the big startups that have emerged lately, especially the transportation startups, what they have done is increase efficiency, because before a driver would go around the city 50% of the time empty. And now with digital systems, you can increase efficiency and say, okay, go over there, and 15 blocks later, you will have the following passenger. How can we take advantage of this system in the insurance world? I know that I know that it's a difficult question when you talk about insurance. When you talk about efficiency, I think that you're talking about reducing costs. No, that's not really is. What I refer to is to the fact that, for example, the people, these drivers are now using time much better. Yes, that's a better use of the equipment. That's a better use of the assets. But the other thing is access, better access, easier access. That is very important in insurance. We do. We interview every new client, and the nice part is, for example, they say I hadn't liked the experience of buying insurance in traditional channels. To sit down with an insurance agent with all those papers, all that paperwork that nobody wants to see, or sit down at a bank with an executive who knows nothing about insurance and a lot of paperwork. That experience was so painful. Nobody likes to access insurance this way, combined with the complexity of the products. They were too complex. So, facilitating access and simplifying the products, I think that those are the main tasks of the InsurTechs that are working in marketing and sales in the insurance world. Also, there is efficiency issues, and many insurers see digital transformation as a way of eliminating paperwork and reducing their quota of costs. But that's not the issue. I mean, you got to do that permanently. Looking for efficiency, you have to do every day. But that is not going to change the rules of the game. And in Latin America, we still have penetration issues. A third part, for example, of Asia, we are not going to attach this gap with more efficiency. No, final clients are not looking for the most efficient insurer. There's a book by an Argentinian book by Andrés Oppenheimer, who it's called Sálvese quien pueda, Run for Your Life, and it's based on an algorithm developed in Oxford. And he is talking about the jobs that are going to disappear, and but it's based on that algorithm, and the algorithm predicts with 90% of probability, and he says that one of the professions that are going to disappear is that of the actuaries, the loss calculators, the loss settlers. Now you can do a settlement online with no human intermediation, with 80% accurate, 80% of the losses insured. And now people do the settlement. People settle those losses through an app. Are we doing it yet? No, but we see that still when people are stolen a wheel or their windshield is broken or things like that, they prefer to do it by talking to a representative. But we could come to the possibility of doing it through an app. And in Rappi, Camilo, what have you done? I hear that you're now using these apps. Yes, 2 years and a half ago, we decided to create another business line. I mean, we have the portal, which is Busqo.com, where all the technology that has been developed by ourselves. And we decided that we were also going to begin to work with sponsors, where we would generate value with our technology. And thus, we have created several alliances, but one of them has been very successful. And most surely, many people here don't love us because of that precisely, but it was the alliance that we created with Rappi to sell SOAT, the mandatory third party general insurance, and we are doing it through Rappi. And people can buy a SOAT in 1 minute. I have done it, and it's wonderful. And besides, they're offering very interesting discounts. And part of that was also beginning the developments we have done and placed them through different sponsors to be able to attract an important part of the market. And today, Rappi, which has had an exponential growth rate, I sat down with Simon one day and said, we have to set up this immediately. This is the opportunity, and we can't let it go. There were approximately 10 intermediaries behind that business. And fortunately, because of our experience in technology and our background, we made the business. They chose us, and it has been very successful. And that is how we are working with other sponsors. We are also working with concessionaires, with this, automobile distributors, and we give them all the technology so that they can be more efficient in quoting and issuing insurance policies. And we work as brokers. Many times the broker would close a business and do the match between the insurance and the sponsor, the insurance company and the sponsor. But I think that as brokers, we must generate more value, and part of that value generation is putting in more technology. Are we talking about the same agreement that Rappi and that we did with Rappi in Argentina? It's a very important issue that we're beginning to see with regard to the development of channels. We're an insurance company, right? So as any insurance company, for example, a bank channel is very important, or other intermediary channels that are used to charging a fee, and they're highly relevant, of course. And we're finding that the channels with greatest potential are other digital startups that can or not have something to do with banking and financial services. Who would imagine that you could buy an insurance policy through Rappi? I think there's many to come. Yes, many, but I think that the key is a concept that is rather cultural. We were talking to Rappi, and that allows us to devote our cost per acquisition, more or less 15 points, similar to the 15 points commission or fee. But instead of sending them to Rappi for Rappi to be able to monetize them, we're sending them to the user. And Rappi is interested in this precisely because we can do a cashback of what they spend in their insurance for Rappi Créditos or Rappi Checks or whatever it's called, so that they can use their Rappi Pay product more frequently, and so they add clients. And we find that with digital companies, we can do alliances that are win-win for everybody involved. And that's very relevant. I mean, we're seeing that we're managing very relevant, very pertinent agreements. We just closed an agreement, for example, with a digital card that is called Voila. 700,000 cards they have issued. Of course, you obtain your insurance with Voila. It's got a cashback of 500 pesos every month that allows you to keep your card active. Mike, if you look at first sight, general insurance, that's easier than life, right? It's a very superficial comment that I was making. Why were you saying that you would rather begin with life? Yeah, it's true. And precisely because of that, we chose life insurance because the most complicated, it would seem, the ones that need most technology, the most intensive in technology, are life insurance. Everybody said, no, you got to be crazy to sell life insurance. It's difficult face to face. And now you want to make it digital. And they were right. It's really very complicated. But we don't have the client to do that. When people say, no, the client wants an insurance agent, well, yeah, some people, a good part of the clients, still want a physical advisor, still. But that's important. The important part is the trend. And if only 1% of the market would buy life insurance online, it would be a wonderful business. It would be $1 billion a year. It would be a great business just with 1% of the clients buying life insurance online. And it's happening in other parts of the world. So I'm sure that a part of the clients will always want to buy online. I'm sure. Teddy, why don't you tell us about the culture that you have in the company? It's a culture. We have a digital culture. We all come from the digital world. I come from DuPont, an Amazon type of player in Argentina. We come from Mercado Libre, from Holland, we work, the entire company is structured, organized in squadrons of products. I say that we're not an insurer or a tech company. We're a company that produces products, digital products, thought of holistically. And so the loss assessors, they're called loss squadrons. And there's an area with developers, with US, with UI, with experience, with people who do designs. And everybody works with agile methodologies. We give them all freedom to choose their methodologies, but they have certain rights, certain ceremonies that are basic. Like, for example, a planning meeting every 2 weeks, and the planning is not only done by the developers, but the developers with the loss estimators. And what this allows us to do is to empower the teams And the culture that we try to develop is to teach them to actually solve people's problems. There's 8 problems, for example, that a user can have. A user can want to send a quote. A user one day had a problem with the car, for example. There's a squadron who is devoted exclusively to mobility. What this allows us to do is to work with a lot of autonomy in each one of these squadrons because they're multidisciplinary and they have all the ability to solve those problems from end to end. Uh, Based on the fact that the best people who can solve a problem are the people that are closer to the problem that that user has. And that is something very different from our home office, from the mentality of our home office, and that is why it's different. I have a curious question. Where do these names of your companies come from? I have no idea. Somebody from marketing made them up. I have no idea. Well, in our case, well, we did a merger which was between Multifácil and Red Seguro, and we were focused on insurance. And we began thinking that possibly we shouldn't focus only on insurance or be open to the fact that maybe tomorrow, if we wanted to set up another vertical company, the name would play well. And that's exactly how we arrived at Busqo.com, which is search or I'm looking for.com. That would be the literal translation if we translated it. If people want financial credits or things like that, where similar players in other countries have done something similar. We wanted to leave the door open to other aspects, and today that's our focus, but we wanted to leave the door open to other assets. We like what lemonade is doing in the United States. We like it very much. It's something with fruit. It's fresh. It's new. That's why we like the idea of lemonade. But you know where lemonade comes from, right? If life gives you lemons, make lemonade. It's the concept of insurance. Something bad happens to you. Well, can I correct my answer? Because then people are going to think I have no idea what I'm doing. Our name actually comes from looking for names, and there's a word in Latin which is jumbo, which is means being connected, and that is where the name came from being connected. Going back to the issue of VCs, you have received capital, for example. In your case, it's a very specific situation, but tell us about that relationship with the VCs and tell us what you can learn. Maybe there's somebody who can learn a lot from you. In this sense, what are your most important experiences? Well, I think that we have experienced the normal life of an entrepreneur in this field of raising investors. We started by finding angel investors. Normally, it's people that are close to you or a strategic investor, and those were our first investors. Those are investments that are worth no more than $100,000 each, and then Easy Insurance, where we received a risk capital fund, which was called Bellum, based in Medellin. And then once we did the merger, Red Seguro, which was the insurance company that belonged to my partner, Nicolas Pardo, there was another fund behind it that was Axo Partners, which was Spanish. And part of the issue of the challenge was actually that we had to merge 2 funds and 2 groups of investors. So this was a challenge, but it was a very interesting experience. And the relationship with them, well, there are funds that have different forms of behavior. There are some that are more relaxed, easier. But there are funds that teach you a lot, because they make you more professional. You have to send them all kinds of reports every month with exit KPIs that are the most important, and this helps the business because then you begin to measure many metrics that before most surely you didn't measure. So your responsibility of receiving monies from these types of players frequently is very good because of that, because it's more demanding on you. And the other part is that they have a very good and very important networking practices that sometimes lead you even to close businesses. But you have to know your investors, to always try to handle a very cordial relationship, because if you don't have a good and cordial relationship, things are not going to work well in the end. And the funds also have to handle this relationship very well, because otherwise, if the entrepreneur is not well motivated, the company is not going to be successful. So that's something that is very important. Yes, that's very important because that's the gasoline we need actually for startups. And in the region, unfortunately, there are very few investment funds. And the result, obviously, is that it is more a market in favor of the BCs that there are instead of the startups. But it's changing because many U.S. funds, SoftBank, for example, told us that they give more importance to this issue of competition. And funds are also being developed. They're professionalizing, quote unquote, because what does it mean to be more professional? To invest more at early stages with more risk, for example, because the market is in the States. In Latin America, it's very complicated to raise money in a pre-revenue stage. It's almost impossible. We talked to several funds during that phase, and it was just losing time. It was just a waste of time. They ask you always for your cash flow. In a pre-revenue stage, what is my cash flow in a pre-revenue stage? Well, nothing. No, your cash flow doesn't look very healthy. We're sorry. Next, of course. And the funds that are coming in are going to change the situation. And it's very, very necessary for these full stack models. You need a lot of capital before you go out to the market, of course. It's part of the fundamentals. Whether you're in a sandbox or not, you do need a lot of capital. Lemonade carriers, everybody raised $20 or $30 million before going out to the market. Here it would be impossible. It might often once in a while, but normally it's very complicated. Yeah, but that happens when you go outside to look for money. When you look for money abroad, it's easier. Yeah, well, at least in Mexico, it's been highly developed. The business angels market is highly developed. They invest in early phases of the business. But that takes you to a certain point of financing, of funding. $500,000 or $1 million with angels, that's almost impossible. So you come to a point where you do have to talk to the funds. Well, perfect. Thank you very much. The last question, very briefly. Can you tell me one thing that you have learned about being entrepreneurs? Very briefly. Don't do it. But please. No, you need. How old are you? How old did you say you were? 35. How old do you think I am? All I say is I think it was very painful. No, I just want to compare. 37, 40, 41. No, I'm 33. 10 years ago, I started being an entrepreneur, and I swear to you, 10 minutes ago, I looked much younger, much younger. It really is a tough thing to do. Yes, it's tough. Really, it's like a roller coaster. It's very complicated. You need nerves of steel. Sometimes you want to throw it all away, and you really need to be very strong. You need something to really push you. It's very, very, very difficult. Do you think? Well, we began when I was very young, when I was 23, and I was lucky enough to sell Groupon. And Groupon was a wonderful success. We did Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, Mexico. How many people use Groupon here, especially women? Because I know I sold you a lot of beauty products. I think we have epilated more than half the women in Colombia. One day we made a calculation with my partner, this is true, of how many epilations we have done. And this is true. The calculation, I think, is very real because we're all nerds, and I think we did a very good calculation. We realized that with all the hair we had pulled off women, we would have been able to make 32,000 dresses. It's
Todo el crecimiento de Uruguay.
Yeah, the European growth was phenomenal. We started a new company which is called Avenida. We got funds from Argentina, from New York, from Amsterdam, and we raised over $55 million. We were in advanced conversations to sell the company $300 million in 2016. And what happened? Amazon doubled its stock in less than 2 years. The investments of our funds, TAR, NASDAQ, which are very large, it's the Malek fund and Tencent fund that were our investors. They had a very large investment in India, and Amazon just destroyed them in India. And they said, well, no more investments in e-commerce. So the two main investors just run away at a time in which in Argentina we had a very unpopular lady president. So attracting investors for 2016 within a very complex international context, Amazon was increasing its cap, and we had to restructure the company in 2016. We had to negotiate with unions. I will never forget. But my first child was about to be born, and I had calls from one of the leaders of the most important unions in Argentina threatening me that they were going to kill me and they were going to kill my baby. So we finished restructuring and selling the company. We sold it well, and now we are in a totally new industry where we are learning about insurance. So what I mean to say is that I think that all my wrinkles are well, now I understand. I understand now. Well, I would say that it's a very difficult journey. I would say that the word is persistence. You have to be persistent. We have to live through very difficult times, moments when you say, well, I don't have money to pay the payroll. What should I do? Fortunately, when you involve large investors, well, it becomes easier. But I think that, as Federico said, you have to have it in your blood and be willing to stand up if you fall. Well, for me, after 2 years of having worked in large corporations, in large insurance companies, I love my freedom and I love the agile system in which we work and not to report on my own experiments. So I think that for me, the most important lesson is that this agility and the organization and the way we make decisions is the true competitive advantage. And in fact, from my point of view, this should be the most important consideration for insurance in digital transformation, ways to work, not just technology, because the lack of agility is the main reason why companies don't change. So this was my lesson. Well, thank you very much. I am very German. My time is up. So thank you very much, Maik, Juan Camilo, and Federico. It was a pleasure talking to you. So we now say goodbye, and now we move on to the last part of our meeting. Thank you very much.